Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Meta Cafe. Grab your cup of coffee or tea, sit back and relax, and let's chat about the energy of the astrological landscape for today, including human design. And we're going to talk a bit about some of the deeper aspects going through the collective right now, hoping and praying to change or evolve our humanness into more embodied spirits. So today is one of those days where we have a sort of quiet from the moon, and we have other planets that are taking the center stage and creating the energy of the day. So let's dive in here and find out what's going on. First of all, this is the quietest I've seen the moon in a while. It's because tomorrow it's at breakneck speed and the next day it's crazy. And there are some other bigger concepts floating through the atmosphere right now that we're working on. In fact, the moon doesn't make any new connections until later this evening when it opposes Saturn and then sextiles Neptune like 1 minute later, 7 minutes later, I guess it was. So we have no new connections for most of the day with the moon, which is probably a good thing because that allows us to absorb some of the energies from these other planets that are creating space for us to make some changes today. So let's say good morning to everybody out there. Hello, Mimi and Ashley. Good morning. Patricia, good morning. And Colleen, good morning. It's nice to see you ladies out there, and anybody else who's joining us, maybe not popping in and saying good morning, we wish you a good morning as well. So today the moon is in Capricorn all day, and as such, it is ruled by the planet Saturn. And Saturn is very business oriented right now. In Capricorn, he has his business garb on, and he is a master builder when he's in this sign. And he's been here now for a couple of years. He's here until December 21st of 2020. So that is nearly a year and a half still of our work to build, to restructure whatever it is in our own personal lives, but also you're seeing that collectively out in our world as we rebuild or we renew the structures. It's evident in the outer world when you hear your elected officials talking about infrastructure, or when you see something happening like with a highway or a road that needs construction, new bridges, etc. That's our infrastructure. Also our city governments, our local governments, the infrastructure that supports the bigger structures. All of that is in an energetic change or evolution or restructuring. And yesterday, of course, we talked about how the prelude to a new structure is the demolishing of an old one, right? When we see buildings being demolished, it's because they're going to be rebuilding that building. And the demolishing is a part of the whole process of rebuilding. So that's a fairly long intro for you to the energy of today, which is Saturn sextile Neptune. This is the exact a combination of those two today. So good morning, Serena. Good to see you too. And so the exact means it's come into the exact space. Remember, we talk about planets and how they're applying, right? Applying pressure, meaning they're coming closer and closer and closer to the exact. Then they hit exact and then they wane. And then sometimes, or they pass out of influence. And then planets retrograde. So sometimes we have the feeling of it going backwards, back to the same spot and applying again, but in retrograde this time, going over the spot and then a third hit yet again on whatever that spot is. Well, that's exactly what's been happening with Saturn sextile Neptune. The first hit was in January, and I use the word hit, but I don't mean that as in, something bad, but that's the first time that Saturn sextiled Neptune exact. And then this is the next one. The second one here is while Saturn is in retrograde. So we're seeing maybe a little bit of a reprisal of what we might have experienced in January as it relates to the rebuilding and restructuring that's going on within our own personal lives. And then in November, we'll have the third exact one. And that time again will be with Saturn in forward motion as it moves over that degree that is forming the sextile and we're done with that. Although with those planets, we're not far from it being in what we call within orb over the entire of 2019. So this is a year's worth of building, but what are we building? That's the question, right? When we look deeper, we can see that what we're really building is well, okay, let me back up a little bit. What we're seeing in the bigger, wider world is science and spirituality inching closer and closer together, science and spirit. And as they move closer, as the places like Heart Math Institute and people like Greg Braden and Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza and more do their research on the science of spirituality, we find how science and the spirit world or the esoteric are moving closer together. So, where before there seemed to be this big chasm between the two, or at least from the point of view of science, right? Science was like, oh, no, got to have proof, got to have this, and this is the way it works. And we're not open to anything magical, spiritual, or esoteric, metaphysical. It's all blah, blah, blah. Now they're moving closer together as we have new technologies that allow us to see into things like the heart and to the solar plexus and the connections that these things make and how we create our reality, etc. So it's really kind of exciting to see how Saturn sextile Neptune is in support of that building or rebuilding of the structure of spirit and form as one. We are going to have more time, I'm sure, that it takes to really bridge that gap. But this is a year that really pushes that out there into the world. So it is a work in progress. I guess that's one thing we can take away from all of this. It is a work in process, and it isn't going, or work in process, work in progress. Either word works. And it's something that we'll see being revealed to us little by little as time goes on, as science moves ever closer to that. And Mimi says, so that is why it is local infrastructure road work is taking forever. I roll to the max. Oh, hell yeah. I know about that. It's kind of crazy. I don't even want to go there, but there is the push for that to come. And it becomes painfully obvious when your roads have potholes or when there's such gridlock on your freeways that you can't move, that it takes you, 2 hours to go 30 miles. That's a bit ridiculous. I remember one time my son and I were on the phone with one another. He worked in Bellevue in Seattle, near Seattle, and lived in Granite Falls, 30 miles as the crow flies. And it would take him nearly 2.5 hours to get home through traffic. That's ridiculous, right? That kind of thing speaks to too fast growth and not enough infrastructure to support that kind of growth. So we're having to face that in all ways, right? In all different kinds of ways. And add to that, various economic pressures. And you can see that this restructuring is going to take time. This is a work in progress. But what we are doing is bringing more and more of spirit into play. We're embodying more and more of the esoteric, the magical, and the ability to co-create a reality that isn't based on waiting, but it does take some patience, right? We don't have, there's a space outside of the time limits that we seem to think that are on everything, where things can happen, where magic can happen. And we just have to be willing to see that and to intend that this is how we're going to work with this. And of course, this has to inform all of our social structures, and that's going to take time as well, right? Our social structures right now seem to, and rightfully so. I'm not saying this is a wrong thing, but our social structures have a very clear demarcation between spirit and matter, right? Or government and religion. And I'm not advocating for either one of those things, but we've held these things separately because we didn't have the consciousness yet to be able to merge the two or see how the two are related. And so they've held separate spaces. But as we move closer together, and that may take more time than what we have in this year, I guarantee it. There's a lot of immaturity out there still. And that's what we're also working with, is this immaturity that sees us, them, and not we. right? So the being threatened by someone's religion or somebody's belief system that's outside of your own, being threatened by someone or a different form of governance, or seeing bugaboos in every corner, right? Every corner. So I was kind of amused this morning as I was watching. I wasn't watching this. This was an article I was reading about, what is his name? Mitch McConnell, and how he's tying up legislation that the House has already passed here in the US, by the way, that the House has already passed, and it's being tied up in the Senate. And what he's doing is using words like socialism and socialist and things like that to scare people into believing that some of these bills that are sitting on his desk that he's holding up, that could really provide some much needed relief for people out there in the world, are based in socialism, and that we're headed to the fear that we're headed out of democracy and into socialism. So you can just see how some of these things, these evolutionary things, get stopped up in the fear that's prevalent. And that fear, if you think about his age and the time period in which he was born into, it makes perfect sense that that's what he's protecting. But it doesn't make sense in the way the world is moving, right? Where we're moving to a more nurturing society, and a more nurturing society that is a fear that it is socialism really isn't. It's really about, how do we take care of one another? How do we make sure that everybody's fed, clothed, has a roof over their head, and has clean water and toxin-free food, et cetera, right? So it's an interesting, we're at this like crux here where some of that old paradigm is still holding power, while we're waiting for this new paradigm people to step up and say, that's not socialism. That's us taking care of one another. That's just smart business. That's just smart economy. So while we're waiting for that to happen, we can see things destroying or crumbling while new things are taking its place. It's really kind of fascinating to watch if you can step out of it. Remember yesterday we got the card Observer? Now I exactly know what that card was all about for us, is to step back and observe what's happening, because I know, at least, I mean, there are things happening all over the world. I was kind of shocked at things that are happening in the Sudan and in the countries of Brazil. There was a major earthquake this morning in Japan. Brexit is hanging over Europe. So the whole world is in this kind of restructuring and demolishing thing. And we deal with it all the best that we can, but our focus needs to be forward looking. Like, what can we create that is more sustainable and is more nurturing and kind and supportive? That's the key, right? So really what we're doing then with Saturn sextile Neptune is let's think of Saturn as the builder, and let's think of Neptune as the dreamer. And we're bringing the builder and the dreamer ever closer together. So we're bringing our dreams to life, and we're realizing a dream perhaps that we've had to be patient through, endure through hardships and things like that, to get to the point where we can see the dream actually realized. And of course, in your personal life, this is happening as well. It's not on that grander societal or national or universal level. It's in the personal level as well. Even though these two planets, one being much more universal, collective, and the other, Saturn, being more transpersonal, but this process is affecting you somewhere in your world. So wherever that opposition of Cancer and Capricorn are in your chart is where things are shaking up, crumbling, and being rebuilt. I was talking to a friend yesterday who noticed this was happening across her 12th and 6th house. And indeed, that's the exact place it's happening in my own world. And that is really about what the work is that you do, and where it is that you need to build more on what it is that you're a master of. It can also be health. The 6th house is health and the body, versus the mental health or the psychic health of the 12th house. So wherever these things are pulling you in two different directions, one end is needing to be let go of and restructured in favor of the other side, where it is being more sustainable, kinder, gentler, protected, and going to be able to last for the long haul. I guess that's what the meaning of sustainability is. But so we have that. And there's something else going on here with us that I hope is taking hold. And that is there's this potential with Saturn sextile Neptune to really recognize the place of work and the place of play, the place of get her done and the place of rest. And hopefully, each of you are also working through that and balancing that in your life, right? We can't be all work and no play, and we can't be all play and no work. I mean, the situation here on the planet is duality. So we have to find the way to balance that duality. And the way we do that is we give voice to both, right? So by I like to use this as an example, watching animals. If you watch dogs at play, right? They're just crazy, 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 playing kittens and cats, and they'll do this too. And then all of a sudden it's a stop, right? They come to a rest point and they just relax or sit down or go get a drink of water or go grab a bite to eat, and then they are back at rest. And that is how we're as well meant to be in our world. Unfortunately, we don't do that. Or our world is kind of designed unimaginatively so around all work, 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 work. And then, oh yeah, you can go home at 5:30, 6 o'clock tonight and rest. And then back at it again tomorrow, work, 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 work. And never is there really this idea of going with the flow of energy for the people that are in the corporation or in the workplace. And so we have artificially gone against the flow for so long that we've forgotten to balance the world of work and the world of play and the world of rest. So now some people are really good at it. Some people are really good at it, and others are not so much good at it. So we're working on it. We're works in progress. And that's what I mean by the work in progress. This whole thing is about being and embodying more and more of the truth of spirit and the truth of the physical, and bringing them together, inching them ever closer together into one beautiful whole. Wouldn't that be nice? All right. So, Asa, what if Cancer Capricorn is in two houses? Look at the degrees. That's a great question. Yes, you could look at degrees because that's going to tell you more precisely where this is happening and which house this is happening in. But you would also look to the house that the cusp of each of those signs is in. So where's the cusp of Cancer in your chart? Where's the cusp of Capricorn in your chart? That's the full brunt of it. So, and for most of you, your houses are like that, right? They cross over the line between two houses. So even though I have Cancer as on the cusp of my first house, there's only 4 degrees left before it's the sign of Leo, right? So you know that the cusp though holds sway. So my first house technically is about Cancer energy, and that makes Capricorn then the cusp of the Capricorn then in my 6th house. So I hope that makes sense to everybody, right? You're dealing with cusp energy, but also the degrees. So let's see if I can show you this. I can actually show you this. Where's my highlighter? I probably moved it into the other room. Here I am back again, moving my computer back and forth. But it was good yesterday because I actually got some good work done in between everything else I was doing. Okay, so I'm going to show you this. So you see this is a chart for today. So this isn't anybody's personal chart. But here's the sign of Cancer right over here on the ascendant. Because right now, this time of year, Cancer is on the ascendant. So the ascendant right here, this bold line is the beginning of the first house. And you can see then there's about, let's see, what is the ascendant's at 16 degrees, almost 17 degrees. So you've got about 14 more degrees of Cancer in the first house. And then this little bit of the sign of Leo, right? So you have to read mostly with Cancer energy on the first house, but there's also Leo energy on that first house. And there's also a whole lot of Cancer in the 12th house, even though the 12th house begins in Gemini. So I hope you can see it's never really, there's a lot of complexity here in a chart. And that's why it's really hard when, I come on and I talk about generalities, or when you read in a newspaper, this general idea, the theme perhaps of the day, but it's different for each one of you because of the way that your chart may be set up. Right. And the same thing happens over here with this in Capricorn. It's split across the sixth and the seventh house. So that's why the degrees of the planets become important, because if you know where 15 degrees is or 22 degrees is of a sign, then you know exactly where the action is taking place. But better is to know the span of degrees that are being affected, because things move. So, which again is a little more complex and requires more of a reading from somebody, or a deeper dive into your own chart. And that's why I always say, Asa, it's so good to know yourself, because then when somebody comes along and says, watch for, let's give the degrees today. Saturn and Neptune are both at 18 degrees of their respective signs, Neptune in Pisces and Saturn in Capricorn. So those planets in some bizarre way are triggering planets in your own charts that are at those degrees, 18 degrees. So if you have another planet at 18 degrees, in some way it's being affected by this particular sextile between Saturn and Neptune, because we don't live in a void, right? This is spreading out around the energy of the map, if you will, of you. So let's see if you had, let's say you had, well, in fact, Jupiter's also at 18 degrees today. So that's a really good way to look at this. And we'll talk a little bit more about Jupiter specifically. But for my bigger example here, we have Saturn and Neptune at 18 degrees of their respective signs. And then Jupiter is at 18 degrees of Sagittarius. So if this were a person, you could not escape the fact that Jupiter and its optimistic view in Sagittarius, if that happens to be where their Jupiter is also being affected. They may be tending to grow too fast without obeying the rules of construction, which is foundation first. You might be moving ahead, skipping ahead, and then you have to come back, when you discover that the foundation had a crack in it and you missed that in the inspection, and built on it anyway. So, this happens to be playing out in the chart here in the sixth house, and that could be the actual environment. Did you build the foundation on sand and not think about the fact that if there's an earthquake and sand liquefies, your foundation is going to sink and it's going to crack the whole of the house or the building or whatever you were building, right? So we have to watch various different things in the chart, because that is how it is individually set up for each of us. So I hope that makes sense to people. I know it's so complex. I'm trying to simplify a very complex subject, and hopefully you guys are getting that. Good morning, Kristen. Good morning, Liz Morris. Good morning, Willa. Good morning, Debbie. Glad to see you ladies out there as well. And anybody else? Laura, good morning. I said good morning to Serena. I think I got everybody. So good morning to all of you. Now I want to talk a little bit about Mercury conjunct Mars, because that is also happening today. Now, planet Mercury is all about communication and the mind. And when it conjuncts a planet that is about action, like Mars, then speeds up our communication and our minds. So we are thinking fast, we are speaking fast, and we have to consciously understand that we need to slow the roll down. Right? We can get so energetic, and that we can feel so good about what we're doing, that and keep moving so fast that we can become insensitive to the things that we would normally pay attention to. Like if you're thinking 10 steps ahead and somebody else is working with you and you perceive that they're behind you and you say, you're going too slow, that insensitive remark could really hurt someone's feelings. So that's a potential. But we have to watch for that in our words and our deeds, right? You know how I think I've done this before with one of my kids, where they were taking too long to do something. So I grab it out of their hands and I do it instead. And that's also a way to be insensitive to what other people are going through. So there are people that are more methodical and more systematic in the way that they're going to use this energy. And then there are others that are going to be quick as bunny rabbits. And again, that depends on where this is going on in your chart and how your own personal chart is set up. But it can be very satisfying here for the next couple of days to see a project through to its finish. We almost seem to have the patience, tested patience, albeit, to stay with something until we get it done. And that then the accomplishment of having waded through whatever it was that we needed to do to get there is very satisfying. Now, I experienced this yesterday in just the energy of the day itself, where I actually removed myself from this spot out into the dining room, and I was able to accomplish quite a bit yesterday, and it felt really good at the end of the day. I felt like, yes, I've gotten things done. And then you move into the evening and you're like, yes, now I can rest. Right now I can rest. So we have that energy going on too, where we want to be satisfied by the work that we do, and then we can be at rest. Unfortunately, for some people, that means they'll just keep working and working and working beyond the point at which they should rest. So you want to be careful of that. Don't overdo that. There's also a sort of bubbling up from deep within us, this competitive spirit. And it may not be for everybody, but there are going to be certain people out there. Mars represents competition, and that Mars energy can be the energy that says, I'm gonna make this a pissing contest, right? I'm gonna make this. I'm gonna shoot out of the gate, and I'm just gonna run, and I'm gonna get this done, and then I'm gonna look back and just watch everybody else struggle because I was so good I got done first. So watch that competitive spirit, right? Who are you in a competition with? And is it really appropriate? There's inappropriate competition, and there's the possibility that you're tapping into that in your world, in your life, and making everything a competition with your coworkers or with your friends or with your family members. And it doesn't have to be. There's no that competition is an old paradigm energy that's also waning, and in favor of synarchy, which is we work together to do something instead of competing against each other for resources or the resting on our laurels kind of energy. Okay. Covered that. Good. Now, any questions? Liz, good morning. She says, I have a bowl formation chart. Everything is all on one side. So depending on which side and or what signs all those planets are in, you can experience this differently based on what's going on. So if the planets that are congregating, say in Capricorn, are all passing over the planets that you have, this can feel different than if they're all passing over on the other side, opposing them. So they're either in conjunction and they can be in other ways too. It just depends. I don't have your chart in front of me, so I don't know what it looks like, but it's either opposition or it could be conjunction, and they feel different, right? They feel different. One has the possibility of working together to get things done. The other one has this teeter-totter effect where you have to find the balance, between both expression of both energies. So it's above like an upside down bowl. Yeah, but it still doesn't tell me what signs are up there and how that's playing out for you right now. I can picture the bowl. And but I would also need to know what's the planet in the empty part of the bowl, the opposite side. So, okay. It would be an interesting chart to look at. You should print yours up one day, or you can order your natal chart from me, or you can get your human design chart. You can go to my website, everybody, because some of you are new out here. You can go to my website and get your free human design chart or your free natal chart, and livingastrology.com, but it's got a little hyphen in it. So go there and get your free human design chart. Comes with a report, and your natal astrology chart comes with information on the house placement in your chart. So there you have that. So I want to shift a little bit to some, can I call them minor? I just love how astrologers do this. They're like, oh, because I've been working on this dimensional astrology certification program, I've been very uber aware of all of the details of It's funny too, because we have Mercury and Mars at the gate of details. So I've been very uber focused on the details of everything to do with astrology, because that's what I'm working on at the moment. And I was looking at what other astrologers say in terms of the minor aspects. And most of them almost feel like they don't even need to pay attention to them. And I'm of the mind that those minor aspects are the ones that annoy us, that create tension, that create anxiety or nervousness within us. We know the bigger ones, right? The more pronounced ones, the trines, the oppositions, the conjunctions, the squares, and the challenges that they possess to us, right? They're working in the macro. But on the micro, these less powerful things are going on, these less powerful aspects are going on. But sometimes, like today, there's quite a few of them. And to me, they build up the tension behind the scene. It's like, that I'm sure you've all experienced times where you're just at ill at ease, but you don't really know why. And it's seemingly like everything's handled, right? The bills are paid, there's food in your pantry. Nobody's fighting in your family, you're healthy, everything seems to be going fine, but there's that feeling, that tension underneath the surface. Please tell me, chime in, guys, if you felt that before, where, for no explainable reason, while your life is going swell, there's these feelings sometimes that come up of this ill at ease or anxiety. And I think it is a testament to the power of the smaller or the less powerful, if you will, transits that occur. And these have names like inconjunct or quincunx or semi-sextile, semi-square, sesquiquadrate. What's one of the other ones that we always are working with lately? I said semi-square, sesquiquadrate. Oh, quintiles, right? And sometimes they're creating some energy that isn't, it's not quite sure where it is or what it's doing for you, unless we actually look at that, right? If we look at that. So you may have noticed over the last couple of weeks, or at least the last couple of shows, I've been really bringing up these less popular transits or aspects, because they're working behind the scenes, they're working underneath the surface, and they are creating, I think, as much energy and potential for change and disruption in your life as the bigger ones. So most astrologers are speaking about the bigger things, but I'm also bringing to your attention where the littler things are happening. And today we have a couple of those littler things happening that, even though everything on the surface may seem super fine and we have energy and we have focus and we have blah, 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 there may be these other little upsetting things. Or they could be really good things too. Maybe sometimes you felt the exact opposite, where instead of the anxiety or the ill at ease feeling underneath the surface, maybe things are out of whack in your life, and unexpectedly what bubbles up is joy or excitement or hope, or something good bubbles up, because it works both ways. Right. I don't mean to err on the side of the negative, because sometimes it's the positive things that bubble up to the surface. Oops, so sorry, forgot to turn my phone off. And at this point, there are both of these kind of things. So we have one of those good ones today. And of course, I'm going to spin it in the best light that I possibly can. And one that's a little scritchier, right? That's my word when I can't say exactly what it is that's bothering me. It's just kind of scritchy, where that itch that you can't get to in the back, your hands don't quite reach it. Yeah, that kind of feeling. And it spurs us on to action in some way, right? And that's what you want to be aware of. What action is it spurring me to do, right? Am I going to blow up my life, or am I going to just enjoy the feeling, or am I just going to, look deeper? So let's talk about what's going on today, actually, in these scritchier things. And we're going to look at them through both astrology and human design, because I thought human design brought out the theme better than just plain astrology does here. And that's the advantage of being dimensional in the way that I present this material, is that we can look at it through different lenses and see a bigger picture, more of a holographic view of what's happening. So, all right, today, I already told you that Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune are all sitting at 18 degrees of their relative positions. And that puts Jupiter in a position of applying pressure to the nodes, because the nodes are also almost, they're 1737. I mean, they're darn close to 18 degrees themselves. By nodes, I mean the north node and the south node of the moon. And that means Jupiter is in an inconjunct today, or a quincunx, a 150-degree angle with the north node. And the north node is really sitting now at the gate 53, which is about new beginnings. So there's this inconjunct happening between Jupiter and its optimism and its beneficent energy, and the north node, where we're heading, the trajectory, our destiny to begin something new, and our needing now to maybe hold on the brake just a little bit, because they're in energies that are not compatible, right? Jupiter's in fire and the north node is in water. Water puts out fire, right? Fire is creative energy, it's passion, it's creative, the fire in your belly kind of, let's move, right? Well, water is more contained, and it has a lot of power, don't get me wrong. It has a lot of power to put out that flame, and it has memory. So I think what we are managing for ourselves is the memory of the remembrance of things that didn't go well, the baggage, right? The part of ourselves that's hesitant to take the path of fire and growth, because the last time we tried that, something might have happened that wasn't so good. Like the last new beginning fizzled out and didn't work. And so now I'm a little gun shy. And so I don't want to necessarily take those steps. So it brings necessary caution to the table. I like that, right? I like that we have cautious optimism. Do you remember when we were talking about 2019 in general? I was saying that the overall bigger picture energy is about being sustainable, conservative, and I renamed conservative to being a good steward of your time, of your resources, of the planet, right? Of the work that you do. So here's the potential high side of being a good steward or being conservative, is that you can sustain growth toward a new beginning. But it feels like there could be some obstacles to that. And it can feel like that you have to take it slower than what we think we want to do, right? Or the I think the impulse energy is that we just want to go and grow, while the more prudent energy is that we want to make it sustainable. And so that may feel a bit to us like putting your foot on the gas and your foot on the brake at the same time. So, or another way, put another way, is the feeling of two steps taken forward, one step back. But if you look at it, you're still one step forward, right? So you have to look at the positive side of this. Now, the nodes are a part of an axis. So they're not, you can't just take the north node and make this the whole picture. It just doesn't work that way, because you have the south node as well. And Jupiter is also, if Jupiter is in an inconjunct to the north node, which it is, then it is in a semi-sextile to the south node. And a semi-sextile is a 30-degree angle relationship. So a half of a sextile. And it is it is not a bad connection, right? Where the north node connection to Jupiter requires us to adjust our thinking, adjust our actions. This one is in support of our actions, but it's in support of the south node, which is looking backwards to the past. But there's something really interesting here, because the south node is at gate 54, which is the gate of ambition and drive. It sits on the root center of the human design chart. Did I bring out a chart this morning? Let's look at that really quickly. So gate 53, and they're kind of next door neighbor gates. They're right here. Here, gate 53 is on the root center, impulse to begin something new. And 54 is also on the root center, the impulse to the drive or the impulse or the ambition to go out in the world and succeed. but it also has a very highly spiritual role in creating our hero's journey, our personal journey to back home, back to our true selves. And so it's interesting that we have both of those going on. Jupiter sort of managing the energy of growth and forward momentum in a new beginning, but also reminding you of what that ambition and drive is in your life. What is it that you came here to do? So we might feel caught up right now between the actions that we want to take and is this really where I meant to go? And questioning ourselves. I question myself all the time, right? I'm scared as crap about some of the things that I put out there that I'm going to do, and then it causes me to pause and look at am I in the right place? Is this the right drive, the right ambition, the right way to grow? And I bet you are all going through that in some way, shape, or form. You may be questioning your life path, your life purpose, your destiny, your soul's purpose, all those, deeper spiritual questions. Am I on path? Because you may feel like this new beginning is opening up and pushing you in a one direction or in a new direction, but a part of you is holding back. And it is that energy. It's sort of like, the flint, rubbing the sticks together to start a fire, where you got to keep applying pressure in order to get the spark that creates the flame. So hopefully you get that. Jupiter, on the other hand, is sitting at the gate. I'm looking up keywords this morning for this, and I'm like, wow, those are some really interesting keywords. Patience. Patience. Jupiter sitting at the gate 26, which is on the ego center, the will center. Now, what did I just do with that human design chart? Here we go. I put it away. So here's gate 26 on the ego center or the will center. So this gate then that Jupiter's sitting at is concerning right use of willpower, the right use of this energy. This is a motor, so it has energy. It has impulse energy to do something, willpower to, in this case, hold on to patience, to endure, to have, I'm going to throw out a new word to you, fortitude. Fortitude. So staying the course, holding tight to the dream, holding tight to the goal, and allowing it to be revealed. What are the next steps? What's the next step? What's the next step? And then following that, sort of like a path, if you're trying to cross a river sometimes or a creek, you have those rocks that pop up and, you can take one step to the next rock and then you can see where the next one might be, the next foothold. So that's what we're doing. But those are minor aspects. You might miss them and in the grand scheme of things, but there's definitely that energy there. Let's see. Yes. Asa. Yep. She says, yes, I so feel like that. Am I going in the right path? And there's also people saying exactly. They've noticed that Mimi says exactly. I've noticed that some people I know are having a heck of a time today. And it may not just be today, right? This may be because there's so many of these little minor connections happening that are going to stand the test of time. So they're not just today. They're going to kind of, be off and on, off and on. Mostly because Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto are all three in retrograde. And they're the ones that are kind of holding this tension. In most cases, it's Jupiter and Saturn right now. But I want to take you to some minor planets or points in your chart as well that are holding minor irritating energies or transits or aspects. They're all sort of interchangeable words here. An aspect is actually speaking of the degree between the two planets. A transit is the span of time that it takes for them to move through those degrees. And the planets that I'm talking about are Uranus, which is a major planet, right? You would agree. Uranus is important in the grand scheme of things. Chiron is also involved with these minor aspects today. And Chiron, wow, the wind just came in my window and blew the light in my eyes. Chiron, I think, is a planet that we need to be more serious about. He's been around long enough now for us to really have been sort of needing to embody everything that is teaching us, that planet is teaching us. And I would like to even see astrologers make a move rather than just sit around and talk about making Chiron a ruler of one of the signs. And my bet, my vote would go to making it the ruler of Virgo. And so in the process, Chiron here is building up some energy. And we also have the Black Moon Lilith, which as our shadow, for some of you who are new here and maybe haven't heard me talk about, or haven't heard many people talk about the Black Moon Lilith, it is a mathematically contrived point. At least this one that I'm talking about. There is Lilith, an asteroid, but I'm not talking about the asteroid. I'm talking about a mathematical computation, and it is a point where it is our shadow. And it usually comes at a point somewhere between the sun and the moon in your chart, in your natal chart. And if you look at it almost right now, it's in the same sort of place between the sun and the moon today. And it's at, I mean, it's more complex than that. So just go with the flow here. It represents your shadow, the shadow part of yourself. And today we have the Black Moon Lilith at 5 degrees of Pisces. We have the planet Chiron at 5 degrees of Aries. And we have Taurus are playing host to Uranus at 5 degrees. So we have 3 things at 5 degrees. And I can't let that pass without bringing it up, right? They're all at the same degree of their relative signs. So that puts Uranus in a semi-sextile to Chiron. A semi-sextile is that fairly good energy, right? It can be a little annoying. We're getting that nudge to serve, right? There's something there about serving and by sharing our gifts and our talents. And then Chiron is in a semi-sextile to the Black Moon Lilith, right? Because if you look at it here, let me circle these guys so you can see them. There's Uranus, there's Chiron, and there's the Black Moon Lilith. So these 3 circles. So if you look at it, the Black Moon Lilith and Chiron are semi-sextile or 30 degrees from one another. Chiron and Uranus are also 30 degrees from one another. And that makes Uranus in a 60-degree relationship to the Black Moon Lilith. So, which is a positive one, right? This is literally saying, get out of your shadow and get out into the world and share your values, share your gifts and your talents in whatever way that you're meant to share them. But I thought it was more interesting to look at where they are in your human design chart. Because we get a theme, right? We're not as familiar with what does a semi-sextile mean? Well, okay, it's a fairly decent connection that these guys are making to one another. So we're connecting shadow to wound. We're connecting wound to revolution or awakening. And we're connecting awakening to shadow, right? So that's what we can look that this is happening. So where are these pieces? Well, the Black Moon Lilith shadow is at the gate 55, which, by the way, I am getting a tattoo. I'm getting this on Saturday, and I'm getting a dragonfly right here on my arm. So Monday morning, if you get to see my new tattoo, and that's the 55 reminds me of dragonfly, and dragonfly being the energy or the energy of gate 55, breaking us out of illusion, right? Waking us up and giving us our wings, if you will. Dragonfly, if you know about dragonfly, it begins as a little nymph, a water insect, where it's just this teeny little bug that you might see in the waters, in the ponds or puddles and so forth that are around. Eventually, it crawls up onto a stick or onto a blade of grass. It affixes itself and it goes through a transformation where it gains its wings and it unfurls its wings and then becomes dragonfly. So what are we unfurling our wings here? What are we dealing with in the shadow that is going to help us unfurl our wings? And it is the energy of the abundance through spirit, right? Gate 55, that brings us ultimate freedom out of victimization. So the shadow that we're dealing with right now is that shadow of victimization, being a victim, blaming others for our condition, or blaming the world on why it is we can't get where we want, or why we can't get what we want, why we can't have good relationships, why we can't have a good flow of money, why we can't have satisfying careers. We're breaking out of that. And a part of breaking out of that is the actual line that it's in, is the 6th line, the role model line of being selfless, stepping up to the plate and sharing of yourself in very powerful ways. And of course, that means you have to stop being the victim, right? You got to be free to be who you are, which also implies that by stepping up to the plate, if you're, using a baseball analogy here, is, you're at bat. And that might mean you have a home run. It might mean you only make it to first base. You might make a double or a triple. Um, you might strike out, but it doesn't mean that you stop yourself from getting up on bat or up on deck or up at bat to do what it is that you're here to do. Being selfless, overcoming that shadow of victimized energy or the victim energy, embodying spirit and getting a move on. And then Chiron at 5 degrees in Aries is this is the one I find really fascinating, is that I don't think I put together that Aries energy was also part of gate 17, which is the gate that I will often tell people is called the gate of opinions. It is the gate where we want to share. It's very scientific in that it could be the hypothesis, and it's the point at which we set out with the hypothesis to prove it, right? So that we can test it, and that we can then maybe it becomes a theory, and then it becomes truth, right? That's gate 17. In its lowest expression, though, it is an energy where we share without waiting for the invitation our opinions. So you see your sister coming downstairs in a dress and you go, "Oh my God, have you looked at yourself in the mirror? That dress doesn't fit you right." Your opinion, right? She didn't ask you, "Hey sis, how do I look?" Nope, she didn't say that, but you shared your opinion, and in a way that can be very wounding, painful, and not helpful or constructive. So the gate 17 here in Chiron is giving us the opportunity to go out in the world and experience, find the best influence for us for inner growth. What is it that, and we're going to make those mistakes. We may do exactly that today in some way, shape, or form with someone, put our foot in our mouths, right? We have a lot of Mercury energy building, with Mars here. We may easily put our foot in our mouths. But what did we learn from that? Not beating ourselves up around that, but using this energy as a way to heal that wound within ourselves, right? Why did we feel the need to say something in the first place? And then why did we say something that might not have been very supportive of that person? And finally, Uranus. Uranus, I find in a very interesting place. And he has been sitting here. It's not new. He's been here for a bit, and he'll stay here for another few months. He's at the gate 27. And the gate 27 sits on the sacral right here, right? The sacral. So this is the center for service. Remember in that new model I showed you guys, the sacral, which is an engine that's always at work. It's the Energizer bunny place. It's always on, always humming. Its energy, though, its work is service. And what are we in service to? Well, 27 would say that we're in service to nurturing, right? That is a feed you, clothe you, teach you gate. And in the line that Uranus is sitting at right now, which is the 4th line, it's about being, and I'm going to say this word and you're going to love it, being bounteous, right? Being bountiful, being prosperous, being so filled to the brim from being nurtured and nurturing others that your cup runneth over. So it is, I think Uranus here is holding the energy of awakening to where you're using victim energy in your life or succumbing to it, and where you're holding on to a wound, and those little minor issues that come up are meant for you to awaken and to release and to move through, to heal, to when you turn and face the shadow, it's no longer there, right? The shadow can only harm you when you're not looking, when you don't see it. So waking up to being more selfless, to growing inwardly, to being bounteous, to being prudent in how you use your energy. That to me is about good stewardship, about new beginnings, moving in the right direction, and having the patience and the fortitude to stay the course and to trust yourself, to trust that your intuition will put you in the right place at the right time with the right people for the right opportunities. So That's a lot for one day, but there's a lot going on, and it's not always visible just by looking at the surface. You kind of have to look underneath it all. You have to look under the carpet to see what's there before you can declare that your house is clean, kind of thing, right? Okay. Let's see what people are saying here. Colleen says, I have a dragonfly on top of my foot in memory of my godmother. Can't wait to see yours. Oh, nice. And that's where her black moon Lilith is. So close or close. So you're about to have a black moon Lilith return. And what that means is hopefully you have moved through all of the ways in which victim energy shows up in your world, where the blame energy shows up in your world. Who do you blame? What do you blame? And or how have you been a victim in the shadow over here? What have you become a victim of? And looking at that as a way of healing, the path of healing. And okay, anything else? Nobody's saying anything else there. So lastly, let's talk about the Pleiadian Earth energy of the day, because I'm always floored by how closely aligned these systems are working to help us move in a conscious spiral toward evolution. And today's energy is 8, devoting. The 8 is the universal energy. So all of the cosmos is flowing with this energy today. All life on this planet is flowing with this energy today. And by the way, when I say all life, I consider the mineral kingdom, the rocks, the trees. I consider everything to have life because everything vibrates with energy. Even my desk, even this cup, even the food in the cup or the coffee in the cup has a vibration. Everything has life on this planet. And through that life, it has this energy, and it is all vibrating to this energy of connecting. The 8 is the number of connecting. It is universal abundance, universal communication, universal abundance in opportunities, and the ability to get done what we want done. So everything is vibrating with life today, with that connectedness. Remember, yesterday it was merging. Yesterday was the 7 energy, and the 7 energy is merging, where we're bringing things together. And now we're actually making the connection, right? The connection that we are all one, that everything is in some form of synchronicity, that, we're not, that we can bring our vibratory level into sync with everything else on the planet. We don't have to vibrate too fast or over slow compared to what everything else is. We can be in sync because we're connected to everything. And the earth energy of the day is devoting. It is a very community oriented energy. It is in Mayan astrology, it is ok, or dog. And think of the dog as, I always think of dog as God in the mirror, and how we consider our dogs to be loyal friends, our man's best friend, right? Dog. And dog being God in the mirror. And that in this mirror, we can see how we are all interconnected, that we are one community, or that we are community oriented, that we're not just this individual stuck out on this island all by ourselves, that we're part of a community and that we can connect that way. And the shadow energy on the earth today would be the feeling stuck or inappropriately giving loyalty. And that would look something like having a cause or something that you've been loyal to, and then never questioning, why am I loyal to that? Right? Does that support me? Does that support life on this planet? Does that support connection? That would be the question I would ask. Does this support connection and community, or does this act as a division? And if it acts as a division, then I'm being loyal to the wrong end of the spectrum over here, and I need to change my loyalty or have another go round in my mind about what am I being loyal to, or who am I being loyal to? And sometimes it's just you being loyal to a belief system that you've adopted for some reason, right? And questioning that. You're only stuck if you feel like you're stuck. You're only stuck if you refuse to move. You're only stuck if that is a thought in your mind, because maybe you're just in a holding pattern, being patient, waiting for the next opportunity. So lots of really juicy energy going on in the day today. Colleen, I actually think I've moved through that victim energy over the past year or two, most of it anyway. And you know what? If your natal Black Moon Lilith is there, that shadow is always going to be there with you. It's always there. The difference is, how do I look at it? How do I deal with it when it pops up? Right? Because now you've got its number, or you should have its number. You know when you're playing that victim role, or you know when you're succumbing to the blame game. You know when you're not having faith that everything is happening in the way it's meant to be. And now you can take steps when that shadow pops up to kind of look at it straight on, and that dissipates it. Right? So that's awesome. That's for everybody who has the shadow of victim energy. And in some ways, we've all been sort of grappling with this because it's moving through Pisces right now. In your own chart, it's moving through Pisces. So wherever Pisces is in your chart is where you may easily succumb to victim energy. So you may want to look at that in your own chart and see where it is. Right? Good morning, Latricia. It's nice to see you out there this morning. And thank you very much. That's very sweet of you. This is one of my favorite colors to wear, royal blue. I have a lot of blue. I noticed if I look back at my videos, I wear a lot of blue. And it's one of those colors that just makes me feel good. Colleen says, that's where my Black Moon Lilith is. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. You already said that. I'm going backwards. There we go. Yes, that's it. Exactly. I catch myself every time I get in victim mode and quickly deal. That is it. So not only do you have your own personal shadow, hers just happens to resonate with the same. Her personal shadow is where it's transiting, but you all have a personal shadow somewhere in your life. And now it may be triggered by succumbing to victim energy. So it's all interconnected, people. That's the thing, right? Your chart is a living, breathing story of you. And as such, it's movable, it changes, and yet there's parts of it that are static, more static than what you would expect, that are really true. Your true, authentic self is always there. And you're almost like your own little solar system with all of these planets and points, moving around you and triggering you in different ways. And in the reason for that is to help you see the truth of who you are and to live the beauty and of you being that authentic being. So good morning, Michelle. It's great to see you out there this morning too. All right, everybody, that is it for me today. Unless somebody has some questions or anything that they want to say, I'm at 9 a.m. I'm pretty much sure I talked about everything I could possibly talk about today. And yeah, so anyway, I hope you all have a great day. Latricia says, I've been working this week on moving forward, realizing that my success lies in moving forward. My past traumas helped shape me. They don't make me. Yes, that's awesome. And hopefully every one of us on this planet is moving toward that realization, right? So, all right, everybody take care. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow morning. And I'm sure we'll have something. Oh, tomorrow's the actual Mercury conjunct Mars day, the exact. But I'll find something more fun to talk about tomorrow. All right. Take care. Bye for now.